exhausted all other means. So you take this building that we sold off and some developers making condos here. He's got the main staircase there. It's beautiful, and there's stair number one. He's got a right wing full of condos and a left wing full of condos. And they try to put in this internal staircase, they can't find a spot. What they're gonna do is build fire escapes on the outside and fire escapes on the outside. So here's everybody's main entryway, and their second means of egress is an exterior staircase. So that's how a lot of these buildings nationwide are getting saved, is because fire escapes are still answering the question on pre-existing structures. Brand new structures, you cannot build a fire escape, you must have 2 staircases inside. But on pre-existing mansions, buildings, institutions, you can turn them into residential or something else and use a fire escape anywhere to satisfy the second means of egress and the 75-foot rule that you guys have sometimes on, you know.
Well, as you said, it's clear that the code's clear on new construction. On existing construction, when you do, if you do have to retrofit or put in a new one, do you find yourself a lot of times, like that's a good example there, that a lot of the buildings at Tufts College and things like that, they have they're accessing them through a window, so you're
Right.
changing out that window and putting a full.
Well, it's your call. A lot of times we can't force upgrade, but the building department and the fire department can work with and make strong suggestions on things, but a lot of times we can replace indefinitely the existing structure. So if it's coming out a window, we can take that fire escape away and put a brand new one exactly where it is, as is. You can make a strong suggestion to say, hey, at this time, can we just blast in a door where that window is and lower the platform and have a new means of getting out? And the answer is usually yes. On our end, the building, the owner, or sometimes we have there's nobody here from the hysterical committee. Sometimes the hysterical committee says, no, can't. But I think safety, public safety trumps.
Yeah, usually.
An ice buildup could be a problem on the door.
Yeah.
No, it's usually 8 inches down, so they don't care. But a lot of times, just for the quick access out, it's easier because a lot of people their windows are a big problem for the occupants to get out, but firemen to get in too. So, but is this pretty much all the people that are going to be here, or we want to start now and then wait for those other people to come in?
Donald, I think we can start.
Yeah. I thought
Feel free to fill in the block if you want to sit over here. I'm gonna come over here and I'll kill the light. But if you guys, anybody has any questions, feel free.
So
Let me check this out.
We've had a lot of classes, and let me get my. We've had a lot of classes that we've done nationwide. So this is a class we've done from New England all the way down to Washington D.C. We've done it from Chicago all the way down to Texas, and we've done it from Seattle all the way down to San Diego. So this is not a local problem. This is a national problem. So the most important part that we're going to do here. Some of you have been to. How many of you have been to a previous class? Anybody here is on the ironwork side of things? Because I know ironworkers were invited. What company?
Boston Ironworks.
Boston Ironworks. Anybody here that's engineers? So this is great. We did this also in Portland, Oregon, and we invited. The class was probably about 75. And believe it or not, with all that involvement, we actually changed the code in the state of Oregon. So 1 state down, 49 to go. And nothing's actually changed, it was just some better definitions came out. So all the codes we're talking about, there's no changes needed. You just need to read the code so you understand what it says that you're supposed to be able to do. And you say, oh, so it's already there, so I'm not changing any code. I'm just going to explain how all 3 codes, the International Building Code, the International Fire Code, and the NFPA all say the same thing. Once you know what they say, then you'll know, okay, we've been dropping the ball a little bit on basically watching. My job is to tell you what's been going on the ornamental side of things, in that everybody kind of left the ornamental guy alone on the fire escapes. Because do I need a permit to paint the fire escape?
No.
So when I get a call from a client, he says, hey, I need you to fix my fire escape. And I get to his place and I have one of these rust buckets there. Is this a paint job repair or is this a structural repair for me?
It's a replacement. It's a demo.
Well, it's
For me, the ironwork guy, talking to the client, do I want to complicate it with a permit?
not if you're the ironwork.
So what is this for me? This is a paint job. Do I need a permit for a paint job?
No.
If you catch me while I'm painting this thing, changing some bolts, what do I tell you? It's a paint job. Do you want me to go pull a permit? I will, but you have to catch me first. If I'm welding on it, and you say, hey, what are you doing? Do I have my fire permit? What's my answer?
paint job.
This is a paint job. I didn't know you needed a fire permit, and this is just a quick little hit. because I stop immediately, because the fire guy showed up. How many fees have I saved so far? No permit fee, no fire permit fee,
No fire detail.
no fire detail. So for 50 to 75 years, what is this?
Peach.
It's a paint job. Now, I got a lot of orange over here. See, everybody see this little orange? What's the orange represent? You got some cards on the ground. What's the orange represent?
Lead.
Lead paint. The EPA came in and said what to you in 2011? It said, hey, from now on, anything older than 1978, is this fire escape older than 1978?
Probably-
Presumed to have lead, can you put a flame to anything that has lead? So now can the painters touch this without a renovator's license? Can they weld on it anymore? So if you catch a guy welding a fire escape, is he breaking the law? We got one more guy that's involved now. How about OSHA? OSHA says that the guys that have the highest lead and or asbestos
Saturated.
saturation or exposure or illnesses, iron workers. Not miscellaneous iron workers, all iron workers. And what do you think you're supposed to have if OSHA sees you working on a fire escape? Think you need a harness? Need harnesses? You think you need equipment to basically tear it apart and fix it? Such as lifts? Yeah. Do you need to have blood draws for your men to make sure that the exposure to all this lead is not... Oh yeah. Are they involved now on it? No. Is EPA involved in it? No. No. Are the codes out there? Yeah. So this is just again some awareness that we're making you aware that there's a lot of problems out there with fire escapes. But for 50 to 75 years, that's a paint job. It takes 25 years to grow a quarter inch of rust. It takes 50 years to grow a half inch of rust. I got a half inch of rust on this fire escape that came from a school. So what have they been doing at this school for 50 years? Repairing it or painting it? It's a paint job wrapped as a repair. And if I paint this well enough and I silicone shut a lot of the connections, can I get an engineer to walk out on a dark, dreary day and hopefully the paint job is still wet so that he doesn't want to get on it? So that when he gets there, he sees what? A shiny fire escape that looks half good from the ground, because he's not going to walk 15 stories or 10 stories or 5. And all I need him to fill out is what? An affidavit that says, to the best of my information, knowledge, and belief. Isn't that an opinion? He's trying to protect his tail, right? And you guys already give him an affidavit that says, protect your tail. It says, to the best of my information, knowledge, and belief, this fire escape is in conformity with the Mass Building Code. He signs it, he gets his $50 or $500. I don't remember what it is anymore. But they charge accordingly for the drive out, the time there. And by the way, when do they call this guy? At the beginning of the show or at the end of the show? When do I want him there if he's going to be involved in my project? That's a paint job and no permit. Beginning or end? And when do I want this guy who wrote the violation to show up?
You don't want him out there at all.
I don't want him anywhere near the job, because all he wants to get the violation removed is a piece of paper from this guy who I didn't even call, and I make sure I have a cup of coffee for him and a check. I said, hey, listen, we just finished painting, it's kind of tacky, let's go up and look at it. So I give him the check, cup of coffee, he gives me what? And he's got the escape clause that says, to the best of my information, knowledge, and belief. Got it? So, let's take a look at what some of the issues are out there in fire escapes. I'll show you a couple of things that are already occurring. Okay? And all we're going to basically be doing is saying, there's a problem out there. The iron worker side of things have been basically taking care of this. This fire escapes are the bastard child of egress. Not too many people care about it, because when they built it 75 years ago, it wasn't a problem. 50 years ago, it wasn't a problem. 25 years ago, it started to show some problems, but not enough to be concerned. But now this grandma's got issues, and she's dropping tenants, and she's dropping firemen. She's not dropping landlords, and she's not dropping building inspectors. So, this is a load test. This is a live load test. This will either take lives or save them, right? That's all this is. So if that's a 4x4 platform or a 5x5 platform, let's take a look at that one right up there. Okay, that's a 5x5, which equals 25 square feet. Times 100 pounds per square feet, that's 2,500 pounds. So you want to load test it, put sandbags over there, or put a bunch of guys on there. Let's take 2,500 pounds divided by 300-pound firemen, or let's make it easy, 250-pound firemen, including all their gear. That means in that 5x5, I can put 10 fully stacked, fully packed firemen. Is that possible? Can you get 10 guys in a 5x5? Only if they're giving each other pony rides. So this thing's built beyond what it can really hold. It's like double. So this is a live load test. Now, if that gives way, and it did, if you look at the back of your brochure, look in the back. That did give way in Marlborough Street in 1973. So it either passes the live load test, or as you see in the photograph, it fails the live load test. And there's a cost. And the cost is not monetary, except for the lawsuits that come afterwards and everything, but the cost is a human life. So on the back photograph there, that woman, and that won a Pulitzer Prize, that woman, she lost her life. Her niece, 8-year-old niece, fell on her, survived. The fireman, with one hand held on, he's alive today. I think this is like they held the 40th anniversary or something recently on this guy. He's still, I don't think he's active fireman anymore, but he's still alive. Okay? So, this is a little bit of the story that you guys are just watching, and this is the photograph that won the Pulitzer Prize. Sadly, a life was taken, and this is what we're trying to avoid. So, in this class, all we're going to talk about is, I want the word guarantee to come. And that's what codes are all about. Codes are about getting as close to a guarantee as possible. So let's take a look at your code, the fire code, and the international, the life safety code. This fire code says, testing and certification. Any fire escape system found to be in a state of deterioration or unsafe shall be repaired immediately. Depending on the structural condition, a load test shall be conducted. So that's pretty clear. So under your fire code, you can walk into any situation that they have an existing fire escape certificate on it, that they just received that day, and you can say, what? I don't trust this. My fire code allows you to do what? Order a load test.
Load test.
But everybody's convinced, the building department convinced, nah, come on, it's a great guy, we know him, everything's good. And you go out there and you see this bucket of bolts. You know what I'm saying? And you're like, listen, I had a class on this stuff. This thing should have never been load tested anyway, but if you guys got a certificate from an engineer, perfect. You're pulling out your trump card that says, depending on the structural condition, who needs to be satisfied? You or the building inspector? If this is the International Fire Code.
No, the International Fire Code.
Because you have some situations where the building code is not doing their job for whatever reason. You're looking for the men's safety, correct? So you come in and say, depending on the condition, depending on the structural condition, whose opinion are they looking for?
Mine.
Yours. You can order a load test. Trump everybody and say, I don't care what we got here, I want a load test. Because I'm seeing this, you guys have shown me this piece of paper that I can't wipe anybody's tail with when I got a dead fireman on the ground. Give me a load test. So I'm not changing any code, it already exists for you in your International Fire Code. Let's go to the NFPA. The authority having jurisdiction shall be permitted to approve any existing fire escape stair that has been shown by load test. Can you use that one?
Yeah, we have the authority of jurisdiction.
Yeah. Well, this actually belongs to the building department also. They too are the authority having jurisdiction. And here's the best part. Or other satisfactory evidence to have adequate strength. What's that mean? If you don't want to do the load test, what's that mean?
Refurbish.
Refurbish it. Show me other evidence. First, show me that you've cleaned the whole thing out and there's no rust in any connection. Second, show me that it's probably tied back into the building. I've got evidence of that. You got all new bolts, and I don't want a load test. The load test is a trump card I pull when I need to pull it, but otherwise, you show me other evidence of strength, I'm good.
Can I ask you a question on that, Cisco?
Sure.
Sorry to interrupt you, but maybe it's more a question for Dave. So if you were gonna test one of these, Dave, you did not do a load test, is there some other method you would use physically out there to satisfy that other satisfactory evidence requirements listed there?
Well, you can do this a number of ways. The exact wording, because the IBC is kind of new here,
Yeah.
and tuned into the 6th edition a little bit more, but it said either by usually by calculation or by test. So you can do a physical test to demonstrate its strength. Or you can use some other we could go in with a pair of calipers, we could measure the thickness of things, we could develop a whole analysis of it. But in fact, that only takes us as far as we can see. We can't, you know, unless we're willing to pull things apart, usually we can't. My question is, are we under the International Fire Code here?
No, I'm just marrying all three here,
Oh, okay.
to show you that all three say the same thing. And I'm gonna answer this other evidence of strength, I have the answer for you today.
Right.
Because now, this is your building code, 1001.3, and it says, testing and certification. Ready? All exterior fire escape systems shall be examined. That's what? What's an exam?
Looked at.
Is that a test? No. That's that visual walkthrough that he's supposed to be doing. Examine first. Then they want you to, shall be examined or tested, which means spot repaired and then load tested, and or certified. So we're gonna read the code to you guys today. So what does the word test and certified mean? So we know that test means test means test. Is everybody clear that it's a load test? Physical weights, 100 pounds per square foot. Now, the only thing about load test, can I load test something that I visually know is bad, is suspect?
Yeah.
So we have to make sure that nothing gets tested, because I got people were trying to force us to load test it anyway, regardless of its current condition. We said, no, we cannot load test something that we already have proof that is suspect. Because I know what a pass grade looks like. You know what a failed grade looks like if I load tested this fire escape? It's all in pieces on the ground. And then what does the owner want me to do? Pay for it, put it back up. So a load test cannot be conducted unless you pass a confidence test. And that's so load test, load test, load test, right? Now, let's talk about certified, because the word certified is here. Other evidence of strength means certified, and on the top one it says, depending on the structural condition, which means certification. So load test is always one option in all three codes, nothing new to be written. And down here we're looking at what is this for our code, the word certified, what's it mean? Certified for us means, right here, you have this fire escape here. Can I certify this to meet the satisfaction of both of you guys not to load test it? So if I clean out every connection in that gussets, in all my connections, I take out and remove 100% of rust. The material left is all, it still meets your thickness, it has not lost any cross. I cleanse the connections both on treads, rails, and we can walk around this thing. I'll tell you all the things that need to get done and I'll also show you. And then I'll prime the areas, and then when I'm putting it back together, prior to putting it back together, I either inject it with 50 of silicone, or I even go where we've gone now to another dimension, is rubber gasketed. And then when you put in brand new bolts, no square heads, no rivets going back in this job, is that refurbishment equal to and as good as a load test? Because he was talking about, we can go there with our calipers and do what's called a reverse calculation load test, which is basically you prove that it was built correctly to handle 100 pounds. But during that proving, you don't want any connections that's suspect, correct? So if you go to a job and you reverse calculate and you don't perform a load test, and you verify that every connection is good and all the connections into the building is sound and verifiable, you've you did what's called a reverse calculated load test. And that's telling you that what I found there is not only in pristine condition, my calculations say that if you were to load test it, it would pass the load test.
Well,
That's how
what
these things are
I
built.
wanted to ask. I have another meeting, but I'll be back up after that. But just a quick question. The reason I'm glad you elaborated on it the way you did, because I'm thinking if you're gonna, say a fire escape that's 3 stories up, which is not a typical situation, 5 by 5, you gotta do 100-pound per square foot load test on it. The practicability, not that practical. I think that a lot of engineers would bring up, 2,500 pounds and put that on, going up 3. How do you get the weight up there? That involves, that's.
Yeah, sandbags, 50-pound sandbags, water bags. You can also do cables. You can put 2,500 pounds on the ground and run cables through and start yanking down. That would also be what's called a load test criteria submitted to the city prior to a load test being done, because you may want to witness it or he may want to witness it. And that's where he basically explains on this unique fire escape how we're going to attack it.
Yeah, water is generally the easiest way, because you can stack up 5-gallon buckets, or you could you know, 55-gallon drums or something. It's
Fill 'em
easy to
up, run
move
a
that
hose in,
and fill it up with a hose and then just let it drain out.
Right, afterwards, yeah.
And then the nice thing about that is you can increase it gradually so that it's not
Yeah,
hitting it as impact.
right, we do a 40% load test first, so if we got 1,000 pounds, you give it 400 pounds first, watch that for about 10 minutes, and then you give it the full load for the remaining 20 minutes, but if you see any creaking, any deflection, you stop the test right away. But again, there's some issues. So let's take a look at what we got. We got rust here. This is what you guys basically find when you go into a fire escape. And this is a detention center for youths. When you first walk up there, it doesn't look any bad, but when you look underneath, you can see quite a bit of rust. Now, here's the biggest issue. Whenever we inspect fire escapes, our biggest issue is what treads are gonna fall out while we're just there in the initial stages. But sometimes your fire prevention guys walk these things, and they act as, well, in some cities and some states they do. Or engineers sometimes walk these, but here's the biggest issue you
I
have.
shouldn't say
I
that. We do.
have a harness in my trunk.
Well, here's the biggest problem. Right now, we've got rust building up on these. We do a hammer test going up for our own safety. It's not part of it's not a load test, it's a safety test, but watch what happens on some of these fire escapes that look like this, and we come up. So some treads are already falling on this thing. That's a 5-pound hammer, actually a 3-pound hammer. So this was a rust bucket falling apart, pieces missing. So we don't even conclude the test, we just stop right there, it's too dangerous. But that was just to show you, that's just to show you that a simple hammer test is gonna be equal to your, you know, you're coming down not paying attention and you step down on it, your force of 200 pounds straight down is gonna basically drop a tread, that's when you go, see how much rust is. And now nobody's making you aware of this, so a lot of times when you guys go fight a fire and it's dark and it's smoky and you're running up, you don't got time to go check that stuff out. So, this happened in Bridgeport, Connecticut, just recently this year.
But earlier in the night, when they pulled out, there were flames coming out of the side of the building. Firefighters say it was one of the scarier moments because when you pull up to a building and you see children and mothers hanging off the side of the fire escape, smoke swirling around them, they said that's scary, scary stuff. They got up there, they got the ladders up, and they said nobody got hurt.
The fire escape, there was 3 or 4 people hanging off the fire escape. They couldn't get off. They were just on the fire escapes. I had people hanging in the fire escapes at the rear of the building, and on this side of the building, we had a bunch of people on that fire escape.
About 50 people were displaced inside this building. Our firefighters say there's good news tonight. It looks like everybody will be allowed to go back in except the one unit where the fire was in. They said that's good luck to them tonight. I'm Bob Wilson, on the scene of Bridgeport, News 8.
So, 50 apartments, and none of the fire escapes worked. Now, as a fireman, you know that when you get to a fire, there's 2 things you're doing. It's either a rescue mission or it's a firefight, right? As soon as they arrive, you got all these people hanging on fire escapes. What's your first order of business?
Life safety.
Life safety. So, you fight fire or save lives?
Save lives.
Save lives. What's the fire do while you're hanging out and saving lives?
Feels big.
Gets bigger. So, they're not even allowed to fight the fire. They gotta get people out or people off. Here we have a fire escape with ladders that are supposed to come down with balances and stuff on it, and you just saw an 8-year-old child dealing with it herself. And why is that? Because she's gonna die. The 8-year-old kids get pretty smart when they're about to die. They know how to get off the stupid thing. But there she is dangling on a fire escape ladder that's supposed to come down by itself, and here she is dangling 10 to 12 feet off the ground, and the guy took a photograph of that, okay? Now, we've got another shot here that this happened, I did this in 2003. Anybody remember the Station Night Fire? Hank Philippi Ryan was calling around, and we got lucky that she just called us out of the blue. She said, hey, you know, we want to do a story on fire escapes, so 100 people died in the Station Night Fire. We want to make people aware that, you know, there's other ways to get out of your house, and, you know, in case you have a fire. I said, well, are you aware that 80% of the stuff I look at doesn't pass inspection? She goes, no. Are you aware that 50% of the stuff I inspect has life safety issues? She goes, no, I don't believe you. So I brought her down to the theater district in downtown Boston, down by the Wang, and I said, I gave her training for about 15 minutes on what rust looks like, you know, what rust in a gusset looks like, what rust in a connection looks like, what rust on a tread, a fallen tread, simple stuff, right? And then she goes like this, okay, take me around, show me stuff. I says, no, look at anything you want, and you tell me if it passes. And because of that class, this is what she did. It's supposed to be a minute show, she actually did it, turned out to be a 5.
The smoke, the flames, and the frightened faces, all in a firefighter's line of duty. But Chief William Hitchcock remembers the night it wasn't the fire that almost stopped him, but the fire escape that broke underneath him.
Where the random just came away from the building.
And our investigation found across Massachusetts more unsafe fire escapes, rusty, deteriorating, crumbling, broken. And what state officials didn't know, the system they set up to keep fire escapes safe is also falling apart.
The potential ramifications are disastrous.
So let's look at this one. This expert ironworker is licensed to build, maintain, and inspect fire
That's my evil
escapes.
twin brother.
For months, we examined dozens of them with alarming results.
Looking at this today, would this pass inspection?
No.
In dormitories, at theaters, at homes, and apartment buildings.
Rust is actually eating away the metal of the fire escape.
Right.
And the bottom line?
It'll get weak and then eventually it'll fall.
This one has rotted connections. This one missing bolts, twisted metal.
Would the stairs come down?
No, never come down.
This one a broken tread.
So how dangerous is it for the people inside this building?
This fire escape is definitely gonna put somebody either in the hospital or it's gonna put somebody in a cemetery.
Fire escapes are so critical. The state building code requires they be certified for structural adequacy and safety every 5 years. But our investigation found that safeguard is simply being ignored. Here's proof. We chose fire escapes at random in Boston, Somerville, Cambridge, Worcester, and here in Quincy. We checked building department files
But there's no fire escape certification.
to see if building owners had submitted their mandatory inspection reports.
There's no certification in this one either.
Bottom line, not one we checked in Quincy had been certified as safe. And the Director of Inspectional Services admitted because of staffing shortages, the city has no idea how many other fire escape owners are breaking the rules.
And as a result, do you know how many fire escapes in your city are safe? Or not?
Well, I don't know.
In Worcester, not one we checked was certified. In Somerville,
No.
4 more fire escapes,
Did it fall through the cracks? Yeah.
not one up-to-date certification. And again, no system for keeping track.
How can they get away with that?
I guess that the shortest answer of all is because we don't have the resources to sit here and follow up on these things.
If structural deficiencies are reported, local building inspectors can actually evacuate residents until repairs are made.
Would you talk to us on camera about this? No?
But when we surveyed 24 more communities, most admitted they had no idea how many fire escapes were certified. In Taunton, inspectors told us they haven't seen a certification in 25 years. Northampton officials said it's a cold day in hell when that happens. In Cambridge, too, not one of our test buildings was certified, and the official in charge would not come out to discuss it. In Boston, where there are more than 8,000 fire escapes, again, according to inspectional services, not one we checked was certified. Officials know they are required to enforce the building code, but they admit they don't always know if owners are breaking the law.
The building code is being ignored.
Right, but it's difficult to write a violation. You don't have knowledge of something like that.
But state officials say for a critical issue like this, communities should know. And they warn, the Massachusetts building code is not optional.
Does it worry you that these fire escapes are not being certified?
This is an important issue and should not be ignored.
That's because after the smoke and flames begin, it'll be too late to learn you've got no way out.
I can't stress it enough, Hank, that these things have to be maintained and someone's got to be watching you.
As a result of our investigation, state officials will now issue an alert to local inspectors. Meanwhile, if there's a fire escape on your home or office, you can contact your local building department to make sure it's properly certified. In the newsroom, I'm Hank Philippi Ryan.
So that was in 2003. This was in 73. So sometimes it takes multiple deaths, multiple times, multiple things happening in order for them to, to make it. Now, you guys remember when, sprinklers, you know more about this, but 30 years ago, you could get away with a building having a sprinkler system working on the first floor, not on the third, and kind of on the fifth. Remember those days? and not all the alarms were really working. Can you get a building to get away with murder this year if all of a sudden their sprinkler system is just shut down for whatever reason?
No.
Right? So what happened in 30 years that made it all of a sudden a top priority? It was the life safety. Really a lot of push by the fire department saying, hey, we need to start fighting this fire before we even get there. We need all the help we can get. We need water on the inside already pissing everywhere. And all we're gonna get there is mop up and clean up. Otherwise, we're not supposed to go in there and let fires burn forever. So, that's why there was a whole push on sprinkler systems and all the commercial. A lot of residentials were getting pushed into sprinkler systems. Even new construction, there's a big push nationwide to put sprinklers in, I think, 3-family homes or the singles? 3 families, right? In Somerville, I believe, now if you want to convert one of your houses into a 3-family condo, you can, 100% sprinkler. So that stopped everybody from making these traps. So fire escapes are in the same point today that sprinklers were 30 years ago. Now that it's becoming a national conversation, that fire escapes can take lives or save them, it's going to go the route of sprinklers. As soon as it becomes part of everybody's checklist and it becomes part of everything, believe me, it's going to join. As soon as you make it easy to say, we don't need any new laws, they already exist in all 3 codes. We just need to make it part of no longer the bastard child of egress. We need to bring it to the forefront and say, I need to tie it to something. Give me your sprinkler certificate. Thank you. By the way, when this sprinkler goes off, people usually evacuate. You're going inside or outside? Oh, outside. I need a certificate with that because every one of these, I have to attach one of these. I don't have one. Not a problem. Let me sign off on this one. But by the way, the building department is going to be contacting you because I usually send 2 forms in with this, not 1. And so you're automatically going to get a request for a certificate. So call it, get your fire escape inspected. I'm not going to stop you, but I'm telling you, there's a 2-part process here. You're going to have your smoke detector signs off. Hey, usually when the smoke detector goes off in your residence, your institution, or your building, it goes to interior, exterior stair. Oh, exterior. Ah, do you have a copy of the certificate? No, I don't. Not a problem. I'm going to sign you out because I got to get my job done. But you're going to get a letter from the building department that says, this is supposed to be a 2-part process. You're going to be doing the monthlies, the yearly inspections of every building. How you doing? People are living here, rental certs or whatever. Buying and selling new occupancy permits for new purchase. Great, usually when I sign one of these off, I have to have a certificate at the bottom that says your 2 means of egress. And here's how abused fire escapes are. Ready? You walk into a building, let's say a residential commercial mix. You walk in, the front stair, and where the back stair used to be, somebody took it all out and they made closet space. What happens to that building that day? It gets shut down, right? Ready? So if you keep a fire escape inside, there's so much respect for an interior stair. Everybody shuts down. The commissioner's down there, the fire chief is down there. They're boarding up the front, tenants out, everybody go to a hotel. They're shutting that place down because somebody took the rear interior staircase out and they made closet space. And until they put it back, what happens? Stays shut down, right? Same building, except on the back of it, it's not an interior staircase, it's an exterior rotten piece of crap like that. Dangling, ready to fall, ready to kill people. And guess what happens? Nothing. Hey, you should get this fixed sometime when you feel like it. Hey, those babies looking at us through the window. Hey, you should, So if you throw this homeless fire escape outside, nobody cares. You drag this thing inside, they're shutting buildings down. So that's why this is the bastard child of egress. That we just have to change, because this thing will kill tenants, will kill firemen, or will kill firemen trying to save tenants. Oh, by the way, every now and then it kills a burglar, going up the stupid thing, not knowing any better. We do have the oddball situation. And you know what happens if I am a burglar and I'm climbing up this thing and I get hurt? It's a lottery ticket. Oh, but I can still sue. You're supposed to maintain a fire escape at all times. You're supposed to maintain 2 means of egress at all times. Not every 5 years, at all times. So, we're going to get started. We're going to create and implement departmental procedures and guidelines. I'll show you what those are. We're going to test and have standard testing for fire escapes. That's what we're gonna open up our book right now. We're gonna implement industry standard reports. We're gonna implement affidavits so that we get some proper oversight with engineers and hold them accountable. And we're gonna start having some confidence testing at the end to make sure that we're either load testing or certifying, and we'll put a tag on it. Here's why you're gonna put a tag on it. You go down an alleyway, and I'm 7 to 10 feet off the ground, I got a red tag on a fire escape, and it says the fire escape is out of service. You gonna get on it? If I have a yellow tag on it, 7 to 10 feet off the ground, which you can clearly see at any time of the day or night, and it says the fire escape has deficiencies, not life safety issues, it has deficiencies, meaning it's under repair. You gonna get on it?
No, junior man.
There you go. And then you got a white one that says the fire escape is certified, and it has not only the contractor that did the work, it has the engineer's logo on it and phone number. You gonna get on it?
Yeah.
That's where we're heading. Tagging. All right? So I'm gonna turn on the lights, and I'm gonna go into the book, and you guys, this is where we're gonna blast a lot of questions. And if you guys have any questions for me now, we'll just get as far as through this book as possible, and then we'll end up here on the fire escape. Question? Unfortunately. No problem. Let's get your card, and you're looking for a training.
The website for the training?
Yeah. Yeah, we actually, Katie will send you the classes for all the fire prevention that we've done.
1 minute before you run.
We're just gonna turn on the light. You wanna put either shut the light off on that for a second? Actually, you can, I think you might be able to keep that going on in the background. It may not hurt my eyes as much. Actually, it does hurt my eyes. Why don't you kill that? But if you can leave a card, and are you gonna try to?
I gotta grab him for 1 minute.
You need us to jump him? You want us to hold him a little bit while you punch him? No? He's pretty big.
Put my money on him.
Cisco, I had a question. You talked about reverse calculating with the engineer.
Right.
How do you reverse calculate a weld that's rusted?
No, there's x-rays.
Yeah.
There's lateral load testing, there's live load testing. So whenever it comes to the welds, what we do to avoid having to do that expensive x-ray, we just drill a bolt through it, keep the original weld as is, and we put a bolt basically making it the secondary connection, not the primary connection anymore. That's how we deal with all welded connections on fire escapes. And that, because they're unreliable or unverifiable, we turn welded connections back into bolt connections. And we eliminate, we delete that as a concern. Would that satisfy you?
Well, I've actually recommended in the past that people maybe tack weld the grading down if it was possible.
Yeah, with that J bolts.
Things like that. And there are some cases where people, I've recommended repairs on fire escapes, and people have done that by welding.
Yes.
Now, I've never seen anything anywhere that says it's illegal to weld on a fire escape.
Yeah, the EPA, so as of 2011, the EPA came out, not just for fire escapes, the EPA said anything with lead, you cannot put a flame to. The EPA right now tells you that you cannot weld on a fire escape that has a lead base. The EPA says right now you need an EPA renovator's license in order just to scrape and paint this thing and capture all the chips correctly. So you are not allowed to weld on a fire escape, not because it's not a method of repair, it's that once you start burning the lead, basically OSHA and the EPA step in and say, this guy's inhaling lead fumes, and who's gonna pay for that liability? So they're saying, you can scrape and paint this thing with the white suit and the mask and the little gloves and the plastic down at the ground. That's the EPA. OSHA says we have to go above and beyond that. You have to also have that guy's doing blood draws, because if they're going to be exposed to fire escapes and any ornamental, there's supposed to be some OSHA guidelines regarding, lead and asbestos.
Well, drilling into a lead-coated piece of metal, is that?
That's acceptable.
That's acceptable?
Yeah, because you're not burning. As a matter of fact, you can't power grind.
You're creating dust.
Right.
Even sanding it or
No, see, I can hand scrape and hand wire brush this. I cannot power brush this.
That's correct, unless you have a HEPA filter.
Exactly, and I can't, even power washing is an issue, because now I gotta collect all that water down below. There's a class that all contractors, have you guys gone to your renovator's license yet?
I am.
The EPA puts on a class everywhere, not just for ironworkers, for general contractors, anybody that's dealing with buildings and lead. And that 8-hour course, you start it in the morning, at night, you will have your certificate with you. So you get the automatic, that's called an EPA renovator's license. Then you gotta register your firm with the EPA, and you have to have licensed guys on site when they're scraping and painting this. Changing bolts does not need to have it's not that you don't need to have an EPA renovator's license, it's just you're not disturbing more than so many square feet. If you're drilling, but as soon as you start scraping the whole structure, that's why a lot of times in some of our...
It's 20 square feet, if you do more than 20 square feet.
Right.
It's not a very big area.
No, if you disturb more than 20 square feet.
Right.
So this is where it's gone now, that why we have a lot of these classes. The paint aspect of it is where you have to really look. So let's take a look at here, and I'm going to go through the entire book. Feel free to make notes. You can take this with you. Let me tell you how this came about. This is called Departmental Procedures and Guidelines. I taught a class in Westboro, had a state official there, and we were talking about code and what code you have to change. He goes, "Cisco, you don't have to change any codes." He goes, "Every department, fire departments and building departments have what they call Departmental Procedures and Guidelines." So they take something like, they take the electrical code, they take the solar code, they take the insulation code, and they kind of write up what they understand it to mean, and they create what's called Departmental Procedures and Guidelines, so that they can help all the electricians come in. They say, hey, how we treat an installation of a 100 amp service is this way, and here's our Departmental Procedures and Guidelines of how we attack every single one. It's not telling them what to do, it's telling them how you guys interpret the code. So what he told me is basically, he said, Cisco, if you work either with somebody from the state or somebody from the local, you can write a generic example of what needs to be done, and if it's generic and it's an interpretation of what the code wants you to do, then that's called the Departmental Procedures and Guidelines. So we created one called Departmental Procedures and Guidelines for inspectors and engineers, repair vendors, and painters. So I'm going to read that to you right now so you guys can understand that this is what we send, and the National Firescape Association will put, and they did this for Lowell. Lowell's one of our model cities because they have basically adopted, so this is the actual one. It has your name, your phone number, your website, your commissioner's name on here. It is generified, and at the very bottom it has the code, and it doesn't have anybody else's name. It doesn't say who to call, doesn't say who to use. It just basically says, here's some generified examples of how you want to inspect fire escape. So let's read, I'm going to read it very quickly out to you. Inspections, and now let's read the code down here. It says, all exterior bridges, right? Have I mentioned fire escapes yet? Steel wooden stairways. Have I mentioned fire escapes yet?
No.
Stairways, fire escapes, now I've mentioned, and egress balconies shall be examined or tested and certified for structural adequacy and safety every 5 years by a mass registered professional engineer. So does that mean only structural engineers, or can a couple other engineers sneak in there? Can a mechanical engineer squeeze in there?
What we do is, this past year, I want the building inspectors in Medford. This past year, we've been sweeping across the city, locating all of the
Fire escapes?
fire escapes, and we're sending letters out to get certifications from a structural engineer.
Perfect. Well, the code says registered professional engineer.
True. Structural engineers are registered professional engineers.
But yeah, they are, but there's also a mechanical engineer
That's true.
and a civil engineer.
That's correct, and if the
So-
building department commissioner wants to request it to be a structural engineer.
Perfect, and it says right there, and you are correct, or others, or other qualified and acceptable to the building official.
Okay.
There you go. So, by the way, the other qualified and acceptable to the building official in the city of Boston also includes G3 licensed guys.
And architects.
And architects also. So, depending on where you go, sometimes it's not just the structural engineer that's watching over this, it's registered architects, it's also G3 licensed guys. So imagine electrical guys with electrical licenses could watch their own stuff, sign off on their own stuff, under the paint permit. You see where the abuse could happen? Well, it's been happening. That's why we're talking about this year. Be very careful, because there's been no oversight, and that's what we're going to try to close up. The fire escapes like that have been painted repeatedly over and over and over again, even though they got 50 years of rust buildup and rust jacking going on. Because if I don't need a permit to pull a paint job, I'll just paint that, I'll fix whatever needs to be painted, and hopefully, if I call this guy out to come and look at it, and he's too precise, what do I do with this guy?
Somebody else.
See you later, and I call somebody else that's half blind. We call it a drive-by, where he drives by in his car. Either by that time he can afford electric windows, and he goes, yep, yeah, it's that fire escape over there. So sadly, in everybody's trade, electrical, plumbing, fire escapes, engineering, there's a few people out there that are, not doing very, very good service to the trade. And sometimes, but what happens is, regardless who did right or who did wrong, this will either kill a tenant or a fireman. So, let me read this part to you that's going to be the NFPA code that basically we put it here just to marry up to the Mass Building Code. It says the fire escape must be examined and or tested and certified, correct? So examined first, so I need a report. So if you write a violation, what's the first thing you need to see before anything ever gets done on this?
Oh, first thing I'll do is tag it.
I know, you already wrote the violation. What's the first thing you want to see as a result of your violation?
I want to see a report.
Report. How many reports have you received? How many years you been here? 5, 10, 15, 25 years?
10.
10 years. How many preliminary reports on fire escape violations have you seen? A lot or just a handful?
Well, probably about a handful.
A handful. Yet you've received here in Medford hundreds of certifications indicating that this guy came in at the beginning or came in at the end. He's purposely left in the dark. We don't want him there in the beginning. Because I'm going to do this job under a paint permit anyway. I'm not going to pull a permit. I don't even need you to be there. I'm not going to bring him until last anyway. So you've had in 10 years a dozen preliminaries, which is professional, and that's the way it should be, proper discussion between you two guys. And then, but yet the city has received 1,000 certificates that you may have not been aware, but there's 1,000 certificates that came in from engineers at the end.
Yeah, what we started doing, I don't mean to interrupt, but what we started doing is when we go out there and we put a card up, we take pictures and then we look at preliminary, and then we see when we come back with the report and everything, when we match them up and see.
Perfect. What we're going to show you is that job is supposed to be done now by the exam, because it says right in the code, examine. The next thing you got to do after the exam and report and repairs are done, you want it either tested or certified. We're going to explain in detail what tested and certified is a little bit more in detail. But now let's take a look at the NFPA. The authority having jurisdiction shall be permitted to approve any fire escape stair that has been shown by load test or other evidence of strength. So that's all the only options you have now on fire escapes is spot repair it, give me a load test. You leave behind one bolt, one square head bolt, one rivet. Is there a guarantee? As soon as you come into that square head bolt and that rivet, and you verify that there's no...
Excuse me.
Yeah.
If you go into the Fastenal catalog, you can go right online and look at it. They still make and still sell square head bolts. What is the objection to square head bolts?
No, a square head bolt is an indication of its age. When we flip
Well, you
out...
can buy a brand new square head bolt today.
Right, but we have an ironworker here. Do you normally buy hex heads or square heads? Hex. The standard in the industry now, not that you can't buy, but if we have to match a look, we'll buy a square head bolt. But it's usually 5, 10 times the cost. It's like trying to buy J-bolts nowadays. Can you buy J-bolts anymore? They don't exist because there was not enough people buy it. But this fire escape, there's no objection to square or hex. It's just that the hex that have the same value, the same structural strength, is what you would put back. So hex heads in here, not square heads. But the square heads and the rivets are an indication of its age. Squares are 50 to 75 years old. Rivets are 75 to 100 years old. But when we ever refurbish a fire escape, everything goes back to hex. So that it's an indicating to you that it got refurbished.
Again, I know you're talking about the age, but what's the specific objection to rivets? Rivets generally tend to be clamped very tightly, and
Sure.
they do tend to keep them.
No, there's no objection. If I was to focus on this over here, and we got square heads, I got to clean this whole thing out. I'm going to cut these away anyway. When I put these back, if the client says I want them to be original, give me back all squares. I'll put squares. I don't care whether I put squares or hex. The important point is I got to remove all this rust and cleanse the connection prime it, seal it, and put it back with any fastener. Some people will come in and say, I don't want you to put in regular bolts, I want galvanized bolts. Great. Well, I don't want galvanized bolts, I want stainless steel bolts. Great. We tell people it really doesn't matter the type of bolt we're gonna put in. As long as the connection is not gonna fail in the future, that bolt will last indefinitely. What fails a bolt is not the bolt, it's the expansion of the connection ripping the bolt apart. So you've got ice jacking or rust jacking, primarily this is all rust jacking. It's gonna just compromise any bolt that's in there, square, hex, or rivet. So we only repair things that have bad connections. But in a refurbishment, which we call certification, good or bad, that connection, by changing the bolt, we can start using the word guarantee. We can start giving you other evidence of strength to avoid the costly load test, which is $3,000, $5,000, $10,000. And that load test of carrying around sandbags or water or cabling or whatever we have to do, doesn't buy one bolt, doesn't buy one can of paint. It's just a load test. You know, it's almost like load testing elevators. There's no value after you spend $3 grand load testing an elevator other than knowing that she's carrying the load. So this repair procedures and guidelines that we made is basically what Lowell has on their website. Lowell hands out to their people who have questions. They say, what do I do? You just wrote me a violation. Well, it says right here, if you're going to have it inspected, in layman's terms, the city official, let me know when I've crossed the legal line. You know what I'm saying?
I don't know if I can catch all of it.
Well, just listen to it. In layman's terms, the city official is looking for a registered structural engineer or others qualified and acceptable by the fire or code official to do a critical examination in lieu of a live load test. And he must submit criteria prior to the inspection. So that means you get a call from him saying his qualifications. Say, hey, I'm a registered architect or I'm a registered structural engineer, and you either say, hey, you're acceptable or not, right? So this means there's a little bit of interaction before an inspection is even performed. Do you agree with that or not?
Yeah.
Okay. And
I mean,
issues written.
Not usually.
Sometimes.
No, I'm not saying you have to. I'm saying
No,
this is.
I mean, if we have questions, and you get something from the structural engineer.
No. What this is saying that is you'd like to speak with the inspector. Otherwise, you're going to get a civil engineer that went and looked at the fire escape and charged the client only to find out that you really don't like civil engineers. You like them to be structural engineers looking at fire escapes. But the guy read it and said, hey, it's a registered professional engineer. I'm a civil engineer. Why aren't you accepting my report?
We send out a letter.
I don't know. I'm just using this
Okay.
to help you say what's going to happen.
Just a little background there. If you, as an engineer,